The crystalline hall stretched for what seemed like miles. Sunlight from 3 different stars filtered through the transparent walls, casting rainbow patterns across the polished floor. Ambassador Daehyun walked down the central aisle, his black diplomatic uniform a stark contrast to the colorful robes and natural forms of the other species around him. He had been preparing for this moment for 3 months. 3 months of analyzing data, compiling reports, and trying to get anyone in the Galactic Council to listen. Today was his last chance. Behind him walked Jiwoo, her hand resting on the datapad that contained everything they needed to prove their case. She was younger than Daehyun, but she had seen combat in the Outer Rim Wars. She knew what was coming better than most of the diplomats in this room. The council chamber was already full. 47 species had sent their representatives. Some floated in specialized atmosphere bubbles. Others sat on traditional chairs. A few simply hovered, their energy forms pulsing with impatience. At the center of it all sat High Counselor Vexithara. His reptilian features were arranged in what Daehyun had learned to recognize as contempt. The High Counselor's scales shifted from green to purple, a sign of annoyance in his species. "The human delegation requests the floor," announced the chamber AI, its voice echoing from every surface. Vexithara's tongue flicked out briefly. "Very well. Though I cannot imagine what urgent matter brings humanity before this assembly. Please, Ambassador Daehyun, enlighten us." There were chuckles from several delegates. Daehyun ignored them. He had expected this. "High Counselor, honored." "Members of the Council," Daehyun began, his voice steady and clear, "I come before you with a warning. 6 months ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected something approaching from dark space. Something massive. Something hostile." He gestured, and Jiwoo activated the holographic projector. Above the council floor, a 3-dimensional star map appeared. Red markers indicated human monitoring stations, and from beyond the edge of known space a dark cloud was spreading inward. "We call it the Void Swarm," Daehyun continued. "Our initial analysis suggested it was a natural phenomenon. We were wrong. 3 months ago, we sent a probe to investigate. It transmitted for exactly 47 seconds before it was consumed. The hologram shifted, showing grainy footage. Something massive moved through space, thousands of organic shapes working together like a school of fish. But these were not fish. They were ships, or creatures. Perhaps both. The probe's final transmission showed vessels unlike anything in our databases," Daehyun said. "They appear to be both mechanical and organic. They move with purpose and coordination, and they are heading directly toward council space." Silence fell over the chamber, but it did not last long. "Fascinating," said Counselor Rathmel, a being composed entirely of glowing gas. "The humans discover something they cannot explain, and immediately assume it is hostile. How very predictable." More laughter echoed through the hall. Daehyun's jaw tightened, but he pressed on. "We have calculated their trajectory and speed. At their current rate, they will reach the outer council worlds within 6 months. We estimate the swarm contains over 50,000 individual units. Each one is roughly the size of a destroyer-class vessel." 50,000, Vexithara repeated, his voice dripping with mockery. "And humanity, in its infinite wisdom and vast experience of, what is it now, 80 years in space, has determined this to be a threat worthy of the Council's attention." "Yes," Daehyun replied simply. The High Counselor leaned forward. "Ambassador, my species has traveled the stars for 6,000 years. The Veltorians have explored space for 9,000. The crystalline collective has existed for longer than your entire planet has harbored life. In all that time, across all that space, none of us have encountered anything matching your description. That is precisely why you should be concerned," Jiwoo interjected, speaking for the first time. "You have no experience with this threat. We do." Vexthara's scales flushed an angry red. "Lieutenant, you forget yourself. This is a diplomatic assembly, not a military briefing." "With respect, High Counselor," Daehyun said quickly, "my colleague makes a valid point. Humanity may be young in galactic terms, but we have extensive experience with hostile forces. Our homeworld taught us to recognize threats and respond to them quickly. Your homeworld, mused Counselor Threshkan, the insectoid representative from the hive worlds, is a death world, is it not? Class 12 gravity, violent weather systems, and an ecosystem built on predation. Yes, Daehyun confirmed. Then perhaps, Threshkan continued, your species sees threats where none exist because you evolved in constant danger. What you perceive as hostile may simply be a natural migration pattern, or a species we have not yet encountered. Daehyun pulled up another image. This is the last clear image from our probe before it was destroyed. You can see the swarm actively breaking down the probe's hull. These markings suggest they were analyzing its composition. They were not merely destroying it. They were studying it, learning from it. The image showed mechanical tendrils wrapped around the probe, peeling it apart layer by layer with frightening efficiency. An aggressive response to an unknown probe entering their territory, Vexisthara said dismissively. How would humanity respond if an unknown object appeared near Earth? We would hail it, Daehyun answered. We would attempt communication. We would not immediately consume it. Different species, different protocols, the High Counselor replied. He looked around the chamber. I propose we vote on the human request. They wish us to authorize a joint military task force to investigate this supposed threat. All in favor? 4 hands, tentacles, and appendages rose into the air. Daehyun recognized them. Threshkan, 2 minor colony representatives, and 1 independent world delegate. All opposed? 43 delegates signaled their rejection. The measure fails, Vexithara announced with barely concealed satisfaction. Ambassador Daehyun, the Council appreciates your concern. However, we see no evidence of a credible threat. We will not authorize military action based on speculation and fear. Daehyun stood silent for a long moment. Then he gathered his materials and bowed formally. I understand, High Counselor. I hope I am wrong, for all our sakes. As he turned to leave, Jiwoo leaned close and whispered, That went exactly as badly as we expected. Yes. Daehyun agreed quietly. Now we do it our way. They walked out of the council chamber together, their footsteps echoing in the now silent hall. Behind them, the delegates were already moving on to other matters, dismissing the human, warning as the paranoid delusions of a young aggressive species. Only Threshkan watched them go, his compound eyes tracking their exit. As soon as the doors closed, he activated his personal data pad and began downloading everything the humans had presented. Someone needed to take this seriously. On board, the human diplomatic vessel, Daehyun stood before a communication terminal. He composed a single message encrypted with military-grade security and sent it directly to Earth. Council rejected the warning. Recommend immediate mobilization. We have 6 months. The response came back within an hour. Understood. Fleet mobilization authorized. Prepare for Protocol 7. Jiwoo read the message over his shoulder. Protocol 7, full war footing. They laughed at us today, Daehyun said quietly, staring out at the stars. I wonder if they will still be laughing in 6 months. Goodbye. Human ship detached from the council station and began its journey back to Earth. And in the darkness beyond known space, the void swarm continued its relentless advance, consuming everything in its path. The emergency beacon lit up the council chamber in harsh red light. It had been exactly 6 months and 4 days since the humans had issued their warning. 6 months since Vexthara had dismissed them with laughter. He was not laughing now. Another world has gone silent, reported the station commander, a being of pure energy whose form flickered with distress. That makes 3 in the past week. Droma, Kellis Prime, and now Talis 6. All communications have ceased. No distress signals, nothing. Vexithara's scales had turned a sickly gray color. Send scout ships. I want visual confirmation. We already did, High Counselor, the commander replied. 6 hours ago. They have not reported back. The council chamber fell silent. 47 delegates stared at the tactical display, watching as 3 more star systems turned black on the map. What could cause this? Asked Rathmul, the gas-based counselor who had mocked the humans months ago. His voice no longer carried any hint of superiority. "We need to consider the possibility," Threshkan said carefully, "that the humans were correct." Vexithara whirled on him. "Impossible. You saw their evidence. It was speculation, fear. They saw shadows and called them monsters. Then what is happening to our worlds?" Threshkan demanded. Before anyone could answer, another alarm sounded. The tactical display updated. 2 more systems had gone dark. Vexithara stood frozen, his mind racing. Finally, he turned to the communication officer. "Contact the human delegation immediately." The holographic projector activated and Ambassador Dae-hyun appeared. He was wearing a different uniform now, military gray instead of diplomatic black. His expression was neutral, unreadable. "High Counselor," he said, his tone formal and cold. "To what do we owe the pleasure?" "Ambassador, we require access to your data on the phenomenon approaching from dark space," Vexithara said, trying to keep his voice steady. "We are experiencing unusual communications disruptions in several border systems." Dae-hyun's expression did not change. "I presented all our data to the Council 6 months ago. The vote was 43-4 against taking action." "Yes, well, circumstances have changed, have they?" Dae-hyun asked. "Because from where I stand, circumstances are exactly as we predicted they would be. The Void Swarm has reached Council space just as we warned. They are consuming your worlds just as we said they would." Vexithara felt his blood run cold. "You knew this would happen?" "We calculated it would happen. We tried to warn you. You laughed at us." Dae-hyun leaned forward. "Tell me, High Counselor, are you laughing now?" The silence that followed was broken by another alarm. 3 more systems gone dark. "We need your help," Vexithara said, and the words tasted like poison in his mouth. "Do you?" Dae-hyun replied. 6 months ago you told us that your species has 6,000 years of space travel experience. That you knew better than us primitive humans. Surely you can handle this with your superior technology and ancient wisdom." "Ambassador, please," Threshkan interjected. "Billions of lives are at stake." Dae-hyun's expression softened slightly when he looked at the insectoid counselor. "I remember your vote, Counselor Threshkan. You were one of the 4. He turned his attention back to Vexithara. "Very well. I will share updated intelligence. But understand we are under no obligation to do so. You made your position clear 6 months ago." The display shifted, showing new surveillance footage. The council members watched in horror as the recordings played. The Void Swarm moved through space like a living nightmare. Thousands of organic vessels, each one covered in writhing tendrils and pulsing with bioluminescent light. They descended on a colony world, Droma, based on the star patterns like locusts. The footage showed the planet's defenses activating. Energy shields powered up. Orbital defense platforms fired volleys of plasma bolts. For a moment it looked like they might hold. Then the swarm adapted. The organic ships began splitting apart, forming smaller units that slipped through the gaps in the defensive fire. They landed on the planet's surface and began burrowing. Within hours, the green and blue world started turning gray. The swarm was stripping it bare, consuming everything, buildings, forests, oceans, even the atmosphere. "Dear gods," whispered Rathmul. "The Council sent military forces to engage them," Dae-hyun continued, showing more footage. "Your fleet arrived at Kellis Prime 2 days ago." The new video showed Council warships, elegant vessels designed over millennia, equipped with the finest weapons in known space. They engaged the swarm with confidence, their energy weapons blazing. The swarm consumed them. It was not even a battle. The organic ships swarmed over the Council fleet like insects over prey. Energy shields flickered and died. Plasma weapons scorched the swarm's hulls, but the creatures simply regenerated the damage within seconds. One by one, the Council ships were torn apart, their crews consumed, their technology absorbed. "Your weapons are ineffective," Dae-hyun stated flatly. "They adapt to energy-based attacks almost immediately. Your shields mean nothing to them. They are a hive intelligence, learning and evolving with every engagement." "Then we are doomed," Vexithara said, his voice hollow. "Perhaps," Dae-hyun replied. "That depends on whether you are willing to accept help from a species you consider primitive." The High Counselor looked up sharply. "You have a way to fight them?" "We have been preparing for 6 months, High Counselor. While you dismissed our warnings, we were building weapons, training crews, and developing strategies." Dae-hyun's eyes were hard. "Humanity learned long ago that you cannot reason with something that only wants to consume. Sometimes you have to fight. Then you will help us?" Threshkan asked hopefully. Daehyun was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Humanity does not abandon people in need, but we also do not work for free. The Council rejected our request for a joint task force. You denied us equal standing. You treated us like children playing at being adults. What do you want?" Vexithara asked through clenched teeth. "Full Council membership, equal voting rights with all other species, unrestricted access to Council technology archives, and formal recognition that humanity tried to warn you and you refused to listen." "That is extortion," Vexithara hissed. "That is the price," Daehyun replied calmly. "Admiral Hyunwoo is already mobilizing our fleet, but we need Council authorization to enter your space. We need access to Jumpgate networks, and we need assurance that when this is over, humanity will have earned its place at the table." Another alarm sounded. 5 more systems had gone dark. "How long until the swarm reaches the inner worlds?" Rathmul asked quietly. "At their current rate, 3 weeks," Daehyun answered. "After that, they will reach the core worlds within 2 months. The Council as you know it will cease to exist." Vexthara looked around the chamber. He saw fear in every face, every form, every energy pattern. They were out of options. "Very well," he said, the words feeling like defeat. "The Council accepts your terms. Full membership, voting rights, technology access. All of it, just stop them." Daehyun nodded once. "Admiral Hyunwoo will contact you within the hour to coordinate fleet movements. I suggest you evacuate any non-essential personnel from border worlds. This is going to get messy." The hologram flickered off, leaving the Council in darkness broken only by the red emergency lights. "Did we just surrender to the humans?" asked one delegate quietly. "No," Threshkan replied. "We just hired the only species in the galaxy crazy enough to fight a war we cannot win." Deep in human space, Admiral Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of his flagship, the dreadnought Indomitable. Around him, 300 warships prepared for combat. These were not the elegant energy weapon platforms the Council favored. These were armored beasts, bristling with kinetic weapons and carrying payloads designed for one purpose: destruction. "All ships report ready." "Admiral," said Captain Sojin from her station. "Good," Hyunwoo replied. He activated the fleet-wide channel. "All vessels, this is Admiral Hyunwoo. 6 months ago the Council laughed when we warned them. Today they are begging for our help. We are going to give it to them. Not because they deserve it, but because billions of innocent people need us." He paused, looking out at the assembled fleet. "The Void Swarm thinks it can consume everything in its path. Today we teach it why humanity does not quit. All ships jump on my mark." 300 warships vanished into faster-than-light travel, heading toward a battle that would change the galaxy forever. The Council observers arrived at the human staging ground 3 hours after the agreement was signed. What they found there defied everything they thought they knew about warfare. Councillor Threshkan floated through the hangar bay of the Indomitable, his compound eyes trying to process everything at once. Beside him, 2 other Council representatives, a crystalline being called Velna, and a liquid-form creature named Realtos, seemed equally overwhelmed. "This way, honored delegates," said Commander Mincio, leading them deeper into the ship. She was young for a commander, perhaps 30 Earth years, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Admiral Hyunwoo wants you to understand what you are dealing with before we engage the swarm." "We understand warfare, Commander," Velna said, her voice chiming like glass bells. "My species has been fighting space battles since before humans discovered fire." Mincio smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. "With respect, Counselor, you understand your kind of warfare. You are about to see ours." They entered a massive observation deck. Through the transparent walls, the human fleet stretched out in formation. But these were not ships like the Council used. Where Council vessels were sleek and graceful, human warships were brutal and functional. They looked like flying fortresses covered in armor plating and bristling with weapons. "Your ships are so heavy," Realtos observed, his liquid form rippling with confusion. "How do they achieve sufficient speed?" "They do not need to be fast," Mincio replied. "They need to be tough. When we fight close. We trade punches until one side stops moving." "That is barbaric," Velna said. "That is effective," Mincio corrected. "Watch." She activated a holographic display showing a Council warship beside a human destroyer for comparison. The Council ship was twice the size but looked delicate, almost artistic in its construction. The human ship was half the size but covered in layered armor that made it look like a predator. "Your vessels rely on energy shields," Mincio explained. One shield generator protecting the entire ship. Very efficient. Very elegant. Also very vulnerable. When your shield fails, you are exposed. She pointed to the human destroyer. We use ablative armor. Layers of metal, ceramic, and composite materials designed to absorb impacts. When one layer is destroyed, there are 3 more beneath it. No single point of failure. But armor is so primitive, Threshkan observed. Energy shields are far more advanced. Advanced does not mean better, said a new voice. Dr. Jae Sung entered the observation deck, carrying a datapad covered in calculations. He was older than Minseo, with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many battles. Energy shields work well against energy weapons. But the swarm does not use energy weapons. They use physical force, claws, tendrils, mass. He pulled up footage of the swarm tearing apart council ships. You see? They grab hold and rip through your shields like they are not even there. Energy shields cannot stop something that is simply pushing through them with brute strength. Then how do you stop them? Hriltos asked. We shoot them, Jae Sung replied simply. With bullets. The council observers exchanged glances. Velna spoke carefully as if addressing a child. Dr. Kinetic weapons are centuries old. We abandoned them when we developed plasma weapons. I know, Jae Sung said. You made a mistake. He activated another display showing a human railgun. This is a magnetic accelerator cannon. It fires a solid metal slug at roughly 12% the speed of light. The slug weighs 2 tons. When it hits something, it does not matter if that something is shielded or not. The kinetic energy is so enormous that it simply punches through. Minseo gestured to the window. Watch. Outside, one of the human cruisers was positioning itself near a large piece of derelict ship, an old council destroyer that had been marked for disposal. The cruiser's main gun began to glow with magnetic energy. The railgun fired. There was no visible beam, no colorful plasma bolt, just a flicker of motion too fast for the eye to follow. And then the derelict destroyer simply exploded, torn in half by the impact. By the ancestors, Threshkan breathed. That is just one gun, Minseo said quietly. Each of our destroyers carries 8. Our cruisers carry 20. And the Indomitable, the Admiral's flagship, carries 47. But surely the swarm will adapt, Velna argued. They adapt to everything. They adapt to patterns, Jae Sung replied. Energy has patterns, frequencies, wavelengths. But kinetic force is not something you adapt to. It is physics. Mass times velocity equals momentum. You cannot evolve your way out of being hit by a 2-ton slug traveling at 40,000 kilometers per second. He pulled up more weapons data. We also carry nuclear missiles, which you consider primitive. Thermite warheads that burn hot enough to melt through any organic material. And something special we have been working on. The hologram showed a new weapon design. Small missiles with unusual electronic components. EMP warheads, Jae Sung explained. Electromagnetic pulse weapons. The swarm uses bioelectric signals to coordinate their hive mind. We believe a strong enough electromagnetic pulse will disrupt their neural networks. Not permanently, but long enough to disable them. You believe, Hriltos repeated. You have not tested this? We tested it on captured swarm tissue, Jae Sung said. It worked. Whether it will work on a full-sized swarm ship remains to be seen. That is why we are here. A door opened and Lieutenant Dong-ha entered with 5 soldiers behind him. They were wearing powered armor, massive exoskeletons that made each soldier look like a walking tank. Their weapons were unlike anything the council observers had seen. These are our Marines, Minseo said. Lieutenant Dong-ha commands the boarding teams. Boarding teams? Threshkan repeated. You plan to board swarm vessels? Someone has to, Dong-ha replied. His voice was filtered through his helmet, giving it a mechanical edge. If the EMP weapons work, they will disable swarm ships temporarily. We will board them, reach their neural cores, and plant explosive charges. It is the only way to make sure they stay dead. He activated his weapon, some kind of plasma cutter designed for close combat. The swarm regenerates. We learned that from your footage. But they cannot regenerate if their core brain is destroyed. This is insane, Velna said flatly. You are planning to fight them at point-blank range. To board their vessels. To engage in hand-to-hand combat with creatures that consume everything they touch. Yes, Dong-ha agreed. Why? The lieutenant was quiet for a moment. Then he said, because someone has to. Because running away means they win. And because humans do not know how to quit. The observation deck doors opened again and Admiral Hyunwoo entered. He was a tall man with gray hair and the bearing of someone who had spent his entire life in military service. Everyone in the room stood straighter when he arrived. "Counselors," he greeted them. "I hope Commander Mincio and Dr. Jae-sung have been enlightening." "Terrifying would be more accurate," Threshkan replied honestly. Hyunwoo smiled. "Good. The swarm should be terrified too. We have analyzed every piece of data from your engagements with them. We know their tactics. We know their weaknesses. And we know how to kill them." He activated the main tactical display, showing the region of space where the swarm was currently operating. "They are heading toward Talos Prime. 12 billion colonists are trapped there, unable to evacuate in time. The swarm will reach the planet in 18 hours. We cannot save them," Belna said quietly. "We tried. We lost 3 fleets. You lost 3 fleets because you fought them the wrong way," Hyunwoo replied. "You tried to keep your distance. You tried to use precision strikes and elegant tactics. That does not work against a swarm." He pointed to the human fleet formation. "We are going to jump directly into the system. We are going to close to point-blank range, and we are going to hit them with everything we have. Kinetic weapons, nuclear warheads, EMP bombs, and if necessary, ramming attacks. We are going to fight dirty, brutal, and mean, because that is how you win a war." "You will lose half your fleet," Riltos predicted. "Probably," Hyunwoo agreed. "But we will save Talos Prime. And we will teach the swarm that humanity is not prey." He looked at each of the council observers in turn. "I want you to watch this battle. I want you to see how we fight. Because when this is over, when we have driven the swarm back and saved your people, I want you to go back to your council and tell them exactly what you saw here today." "And what is that?" Threshkan asked. "That humanity may be young," Hyunwoo replied. "That we may be primitive by your standards. But we know how to survive. We climbed to the top of the food chain on a death world. We learned to fight predators that wanted to eat us. We learned to never give up, never surrender, and never stop fighting." He gestured to the fleet outside. "The swarm thinks it is the ultimate predator. Today, it meets something it has never encountered before. It meets humans." The admiral turned to his crew. "All ships prepare for jump. Destination, Talos Prime, combat protocols in effect. May whoever is listening watch over us." 300 warships powered up their faster-than-light drives. In 18 hours, they would either save 12 billion lives or die trying. But they would not run. They would not hide because that was not the human way. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Talos Prime system. What they saw made even the most experienced veterans pause. The Void Swarm had already reached the planet. Thousands of organic ships swarmed in orbit like insects around a corpse. The planet's orbital defense platforms were gone, consumed. The surface was already beginning to change color as the swarm started its harvest. "Sensor count?" Admiral Hyunwoo asked, his voice calm despite what he was seeing. 7,000 individual swarm units, reported Lieutenant Haewon from the tactical station. Mass ranging from destroyer size to carrier size. They are concentrated around the planet. No organized formation. They move like a school of fish. "Good," Hyunwoo said. "That means they do not expect resistance. They have gotten used to easy prey. All ships combat speed. We are going in." On the observation deck, the council representatives watched in disbelief as the human fleet began accelerating directly toward the swarm. "They are not going to try to outmaneuver them?" Velna asked. "They are just charging straight in?" "That is the plan," Commander Mincio replied. She was now wearing combat armor, preparing for the fight ahead. "The Admiral believes surprise and aggression are our best weapons." Captain So Jin's voice came over the fleet-wide channel. "All ships, first wave on my mark. Nuclear payload, fire." 500 missiles launched simultaneously from the human fleet. They were not guided by complex targeting systems or sophisticated AI. They were simple, brutal, and ancient in design. Each one carried a nuclear warhead. The swarm detected them immediately and began moving to intercept. Thousands of organic ships surged forward, attempting to destroy the missiles before they detonated. They failed. The nuclear warheads went off in a cascading chain reaction. White light flooded the system as miniature suns bloomed among the swarm. Radiation and heat washed over the organic ships. Hundreds of them were vaporized instantly. Hundreds more were crippled. Their organic hulls burned and damaged. But the swarm adapted quickly. The survivors began hardening their outer shells, making them more resistant to heat and radiation. Within minutes, the organic ships had evolved a defense against nuclear weapons. Adaptation confirmed, Haewon reported. They are already showing resistance to nuclear detonations. Expected, Hyunwoo said. Sojin second wave. Kinetic bombardment. Show them what happens when you cannot adapt to physics. The railguns fired. Unlike the missiles, there was no warning. The 2-ton slugs traveled too fast for the swarm to react. They simply appeared in the middle of the swarm formations and punched through everything in their path. One slug hit a large swarm vessel and tore through it like it was made of paper. The organic ship exploded from the inside, its structure unable to contain the kinetic energy. The slug kept going, hitting 2 more vessels behind it before finally losing momentum. Across the battlefield, railgun slugs carved paths of destruction through the swarm. The organic ships tried to dodge, but they were too slow. They tried to harden their hulls, but it made no difference. Kinetic force did not care about armor or adaptation. It simply destroyed. They are breaking formation, Haewon reported. The swarm is splitting into smaller groups. Smart, Hyunwoo said. Smaller targets are harder to hit. All ships close to engagement range. Prepare for close combat. The human fleet surged forward, their armored hulls gleaming in the light of Talos Prime's sun. The swarm responded by swarming toward them, thousands of organic ships moving with terrifying coordination. On board the destroyer Seoul, Commander Jun-ki led his fighter wing into the battle. Human fighters were not the elegant spacecraft the Council used. They were small, fast, and carried weapons designed for one purpose, to hurt something. All wings formation scatter, Jun-ki ordered. Do not give them a single target. Hit fast, hit hard, and get out. The fighters dove into the swarm like sharks into a school of fish. Their weapons fired continuously, kinetic bullets that ripped through organic hulls, thermite missiles that burned with intense heat, and occasionally, the special payload, EMP bombs. Watch and learn, Jun-ki muttered as he armed an EMP weapon. He flew close to a large swarm vessel, closer than any Council pilot would dare, and released the bomb directly against its hull. The electromagnetic pulse detonated with a visible ripple of energy. The swarm vessel's bioluminescent lights flickered and died. Its organic tendrils went limp. The creature simply stopped moving, floating dead in space. EMP confirmed effective, Jun-ki shouted. They cannot adapt to it fast enough. All wings prioritize EMP deployment on large targets. The Council observers watched as human tactics unfolded. It was nothing like their precise, calculated warfare. This was chaos. Human ships charged directly into swarm formations, their weapons firing in all directions. When their ammunition ran low, they used their ships as weapons, ramming swarm vessels and crushing them with their armored hulls. They are insane, Velna whispered. They are winning, Threshkan corrected, pointing at the tactical display. The swarm numbers were dropping rapidly. Already over 1,000 swarm vessels had been destroyed or disabled. On the Indomitable, Admiral Hyunwoo watched the battle unfold with a cold eye. Sojin, target the largest swarm clusters. I want maximum disruption. Yes, sir, Captain Sojin replied. She was calm, focused, directing her ship through the chaos like a conductor leading an orchestra, main guns charging. Target locked. The Indomitable's 47 railguns fired simultaneously. The impact was devastating. An entire section of the swarm simply ceased to exist, torn apart by the concentrated kinetic bombardment. The surviving swarm vessels began moving away from the human flagship, recognizing it as the most dangerous threat. They are adapting their tactics, Haewon reported. Smaller swarm units are trying to overwhelm individual ships while larger units focus on the Indomitable. Then we improvise, Hyunwoo said. He activated his command channel. All ships defensive formation around the Indomitable. Dongha, you are clear for boarding operations. Target disabled swarm vessels. I want those neural cores destroyed. Acknowledged, Lieutenant Dongha replied. His boarding craft launched from the Indomitable, carrying 20 Marines in powered armor. They headed straight for a swarm vessel that had been disabled by an EMP blast. The boarding craft punched through the organic hull like a bullet through flesh. Dongha and his Marines poured out, their weapons ready. Inside the swarm vessel was a nightmare. Organic corridors pulsed with dying light. Strange fluids dripped from the walls, and in the distance they could hear something moving. The swarm's defensive organisms still active despite the EMP. Move fast, Dongha ordered. Find the neural core. Plant the charges. Get out. They ran through the organic maze, their armor sensors guiding them toward the center of the vessel. Twice they encountered swarm defenders. small organic creatures that attacked with claws and acid. The Marines cut them down with plasma cutters and kinetic rifles. Finally, they reached the core. It was a massive pulsing organ the size of a small building. Bioluminescent veins spread across its surface, still flickering with dying energy. "Plant the charges," Dong Ha ordered. 3 minutes, move. His Marines worked quickly, attaching explosive devices to the neural core. The charges were simple but effective, thermite-based bombs that would burn hot enough to destroy organic material completely. "Charges set," reported one Marine. "Timer active. 2 minutes 30 seconds. Back to the craft, run!" They sprinted back through the corridors as the timer counted down. Behind them, the swarm vessel was beginning to regenerate. The EMP effects were wearing off. They had seconds to escape. Dong Ha was the last one onto the boarding craft. "Go, go, go!" The craft punched back out through the hull just as the charges detonated. The swarm vessel exploded from within, its neural core destroyed. Without its brain, the organic ship was just dead tissue floating in space. "Boarding operation successful," Dong Ha reported. "Neural core destroyed. The swarm cannot regenerate this one." "Excellent," Hyunwoo replied. "All boarding teams begin operations. I want every disabled swarm vessel neutralized permanently." The battle continued for 3 more hours. It was brutal, chaotic, and costly. Human ships took massive damage. Some were destroyed completely, their crews lost. But they fought on, refusing to retreat. The swarm had never encountered resistance like this. Every time they adapted to one weapon, the humans switched to another. Every time they tried a new tactic, the humans countered it. And the human ships kept coming, kept fighting even when damaged and crippled. Finally, the tide turned. The swarm began to withdraw, their numbers reduced by 90%. The survivors fled into deep space, leaving the dead hulks of thousands of their vessels floating among the wreckage. "Swarm is retreating," Haiwan reported. "Talus Prime is secure." Hyunwoo allowed himself a small smile. "Damage report?" 42 ships destroyed. 78 ships with heavy damage. Estimated casualties 4,000 personnel. The Admiral's smile faded. 4,000 dead, but 12 billion saved. "Begin evacuation operations," he ordered. "Get every civilian off that planet before the swarm regroups." And someone sent a message to the council. "What should it say, sir?" Haiwan asked. Hyunwoo thought for a moment. Then he said, "Tell them Talus Prime is secure. Tell them humanity kept its promise." 2 weeks after the Battle of Talus Prime, the Galactic Council reconvened an emergency session. The crystalline hall was packed. Every species had sent representatives. Every delegate wanted to see what would happen next. Ambassador Dae-hyun walked down the central aisle again, but this time was different. This time, Admiral Hyunwoo walked beside him, wearing his full military uniform decorated with medals from the battle. Behind them walked Captain So-jin, Commander Min-seo, and Lieutenant Dong Ha. The delegation had doubled in size. More importantly, they walked differently. 6 months ago, Dae-hyun had come as a supplicant, asking for help that was denied. Today he walked as an equal, perhaps more than equal. The delegates fell silent as the humans took their position at the center of the chamber. High Counselor Vexithara sat in his chair, his scales a dull gray color. He had aged visibly in the past weeks. "Ambassador Dae-hyun," Vexithara began, his voice lacking its former arrogance. "Admiral Hyunwoo, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I wish to express our gratitude for your intervention at Talus Prime. 12 billion lives were saved because of human courage and sacrifice." He gestured to an attendant, who brought forward an ornate box. "As a token of our appreciation, the Council wishes to present you with the Star of Valor, our highest military honor." Dae-hyun looked at the medal for a long moment. Then he said, "Thank you, High Counselor. But we did not come here for medals." Vexithara blinked in surprise. "Then what do you want?" "What we agreed upon," Dae-hyun replied. "Full council membership, equal voting rights, unrestricted access to technology archives, and formal recognition of what happened 6 months ago." "Yes, of course," Vexithara said quickly. "The council stands by its agreement. We are prepared to grant humanity full membership and—" "Under duress," Admiral Hyunwoo interrupted. His voice was quiet but carried clearly through the chamber. "You agreed to our terms under duress. You said so yourself. Now that the immediate threat is past, are you planning to honor that agreement? Or will you find some excuse to delay, to negotiate, to reduce what was promised?" Vexithara's scales flushed red. Admiral, I assure you, let me tell you what has happened in the past 2 weeks, Hyunwoo continued, walking forward to stand directly in front of the High Counselor. While you have been preparing this ceremony, humanity has been fighting. We have engaged the Void Swarm at 17 additional locations, 17 battles. We have saved 23 billion Council citizens from certain death. He activated a holographic display showing battle reports. At Kellis Secondary, we lost 80 ships destroying a swarm fleet. At Droma Station, we sacrificed an entire cruiser squadron to cover civilian evacuations. At the Rift Colonies, my Marines fought for 6 hours in hand-to-hand combat to secure an evacuation corridor. The images showed the cost: damaged ships, casualty lists, memorial services. We have lost over 7,000 personnel in these engagements, Hyunwoo said. 7,000 humans who died protecting people who, 6 months ago, laughed at our warnings. Who called us primitive, who dismissed us as paranoid warmongers. The chamber was completely silent now. So when you offer us a medal, Hyunwoo continued, forgive me if I find it insulting. We did not fight for your gratitude. We fought because it was necessary. We fought because people needed help and no one else could provide it. Counselor Threshkhan stood up from his seat. Admiral Hyunwoo is correct. The Council owes humanity far more than medals and ceremonies. We owe them our existence. Agreed, said Riltos, the liquid form delegate. Without human intervention, the swarm would have consumed the core worlds within weeks. We should honor our agreement without hesitation or debate, but not everyone agreed. A delegate from the Kral Federation, a tall insectoid creature named Vaxthar, rose to speak. With respect, are we prepared to grant a species only 80 years in space equal status to civilizations that have existed for millennia? Yes, humanity saved us, but that does not automatically qualify them for Council membership. Then what does? Daehyun asked sharply. What must we do to prove ourselves worthy? We warned you of danger and you ignored us. We prepared while you mocked us. We fought while you hid. We saved you when you were helpless. Tell me, Counselor Vaxthar, what more do you require? Vaxthar hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. It is not about requirements. It is about tradition, protocol, the proper way of doing things. Your proper way of doing things almost got you all killed, Captain Sojin interjected. She stepped forward, her uniform still showing scorch marks from recent combat. Your traditions made you complacent. Your protocols made you blind. You had 6,000 years of space travel, and never considered that something out there might be stronger than you. She gestured to the human delegation. We had 80 years. 80 years. But we learned one thing you forgot. The universe does not care about your traditions. It does not care how old your civilization is or how elegant your technology. When something wants to kill you, all that matters is whether you can fight back. President Suyan's hologram appeared at the center of the chamber. She was an older woman with silver hair and sharp eyes that had seen humanity rise from a single planet to a galactic power. Honored delegates, she began, her voice calm but firm. I am President Suyan of the United Earth Government. I wish I could say I am pleased to address this assembly, but I would be lying. She looked around the chamber, making eye contact with each delegate in turn. 6 months ago, Ambassador Daehyun came before you with evidence of a threat. He presented data. He showed projections. He offered to coordinate a joint military response. And you laughed at him. Her expression hardened. You voted 43-4 to dismiss our warning. You called us primitive. You called us paranoid. You implied that we were too young, too inexperienced, too aggressive to understand the realities of galactic civilization. She paused, letting her words sink in. And then, when your world started dying, you came to us, not with respect, not with humility, but with demands. You demanded our help as if it were your right, as if we owed you protection simply because we existed. President Suyan, Vexithara began, but she cut him off. I am not finished, High Counselor. Humanity agreed to help you despite your treatment of us. We agreed because billions of innocent people needed protection, and we had the ability to provide it. We did not do it for medals. We did not do it for recognition. We did it because it was the right thing to do. She leaned forward. But understand this, we will not be dismissed again. We will not be treated as lesser beings. We earned our place at this table with blood and sacrifice. We purchased it with the lives of 7,000 brave men and women who died protecting a galaxy that did not respect them. We do respect them, Threshkan said quietly. We respect humanity. That is why I, for one, support full membership without conditions. Other delegates began to murmur agreement, but Vexithara held up a hand for silence. The issue is not respect, he said carefully. The issue is precedent. If we grant humanity full membership based on military achievement, what message does that send? That the only way to earn a seat on the council is through warfare? No, Admiral Hyunwoo replied. The message is that when you ignore someone's warning and then beg for their help, you pay the price they name. You made an agreement, High Counselor. Are you planning to honor it? Vexithara was silent for a long moment. Then he said, what if the swarm is not truly defeated? What if this is only a temporary retreat? Humanity may have won battles, but the war may not be over. The war is not over, Hyunwoo agreed. Our intelligence suggests the swarm is regrouping in dark space. They will return, probably within 6 months, which is exactly why you need us. He pulled up a new tactical display showing swarm movements. There are 43 more incursion vectors we have identified. 43 possible routes the swarm could use to enter council space. Do you have the military capability to defend against all of them? The silence was his answer. We do, Hyunwoo continued. We have been preparing for this fight since the moment you dismissed our warning. We have weapons you do not understand, tactics you have never considered, and most importantly, we have the will to fight when others would surrender. He looked directly at Vexthara. So I will ask you one final time, High Counselor. Will you honor your agreement? Or will humanity withdraw our forces and leave you to face the swarm alone? It was a bluff and everyone in the room knew it. Humanity would not abandon billions of people to die, but the threat was effective nonetheless. Vexithara looked around the chamber, seeing fear and desperation in the faces of his fellow counselors. Finally he said, very well. The council will honor its agreement. Humanity is granted full membership, equal voting rights, and unrestricted technology access effective immediately. And the recognition? Daehyun pressed. Formal acknowledgement of what happened. Vexthara's scales darkened to almost black, a sign of deep shame in his species. Yes. Let the record show that the Galactic Council dismissed humanity's warning about the Void Swarm. Let it show that we were wrong. And let it show that humanity saved us despite our arrogance. Thank you, High Counselor, Daehyun said quietly. That is all we wanted. President Soo-yeon spoke again.